Hello and welcome to Handy Ranch. Today I will be building a chicken tractor. The original plans for this chicken tractor can be found on the Fresh Eggs Daily site. I'll leave a link to that. I'm going to be doing pretty much what was on there, except I'm going to do things a little bit different, and I'll talk about that here. The first thing I'm going to be doing different is using 2x4s. The original post had 2x3s listed, but I'm using 2x4s, and we have some from Pallets that are 10 feet long. I gotta dig them out of this pile of materials here. And those only two. I need two more, and I'll show you where those are. They're on this monster pallet, so I gotta take this apart to get them off. So I'll get back to you when I'm done. Well, I'm back about an hour later. It's got it all wrapped up except for this stuff. I'm gonna have to take all the nails out of that, but I'll mess with that later. I'm gonna get the tools cleaned up. I'm gonna get myself cleaned up. There's a lot of trash around here. I would highly suggest that you have safety equipment because there are a lot of rusty nails. If you're gonna take them apart like I was doing, I was kneeling on them and stuff. So it is important to have safety equipment unless you like getting stuck with rusty nails. So I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna clean myself up. I'm full of trash from kneeling on it, and I'm gonna head on down to the hardware store to get the rest of what we need, and I'll get back to you when I come back. Well, I'm back, and here's what we got. We got some hinges for the door. This is for the door too. And these are for attaching the welded wire to the frame. These are for attaching, these are zip ties. They're for attaching the poultry netting or hardware cloth or whatever we use to keep out, smaller things to the welded wire. So I'm going to attach chicken wire or some kind of other small wire to the welded wire. The only thing they did not have was PVC pipe for the hoops. They were out of stock, but we'll work on getting some of that. Oh, and one more thing, we also got some barn paint, and the barn paint is for sealing off the wood, just coating it. And barn paint, and the reasoning with barn paint is usually cheaper. And why we got red is because we can't seem to find white anywhere, but we're able to find red. So we went with red. I don't really care how it looks, it's just for functionality. So anyway, on with the build. So to start out here, I'm going to cut two of these to 6 feet and the other two to 8 feet. I'll pick the ones that aren't in too terrible condition. And they're all about 10'4", so they're all going to need to be trimmed down. So I'm going to grab the saw and measure them up, chop them. And you'll probably also notice that I move these sawhorses outside. That's because I have sawed in the garage before, and it usually makes a mess. It just sends dust everywhere and coats everything. So if you're wondering, that's why I'm cutting outside today. Okay, I want to point out here quick, I'm changing the blade. I'm changing it to the framing blade. This is 62, so I think this is 24. Cuts faster, and we don't really need that smooth of a finish. And what I want to say is, don't over tighten your blade, because bad things can happen. I was trying to get it off, and the wrench slips and stuff, so it's really stuck on there. So I'm gonna have to get it off. I'll find something though, and I'll get back to you when I'm ready to cut. Alright, boards are cut here. Here's the 6 foot, the two in the front here, and here are the 8 feet ones. Now I had to use, these are the 3 off of that pallet I just took apart, and then this one's from an older one we had. and as you can see, it has nails still in it, and that's from taking it apart with the Sawzall. And why I don't like doing that, if I didn't say before, is because there may be a nail right where you're planning on cutting, and it also provides other problems, like if you were going to screw into it, you might run into one of the nails, so I don't like to do that. And I also wanted to mention that this will not be square, and that's because the lumber's not square, it's warped, and that's okay. I'm not going to try too hard to make it square, because all it's going to be doing is, holding chickens in it and stuff. And, if it, I don't really worry about square a whole lot in things like this. I mean, maybe if you're making a really nice looking chicken coop, or, making a bookshelf or house or whatever. But for things like this, garden boxes and whatnot, I don't really worry about it too much. So I'm going to assemble the frame after I clean up a little bit here, and I'll show you what I'm using to do that. I got my parts all laid out here now, and I'm just going to lay it out like this. I'm going to use some wood screws and a drill and punch them into the side there. Probably use 2 on every corner. And yeah, we're going to be using these just deck screws. I think they're 2.5 inches, and that's pretty much what we use for every structural thing we build out of wood. Now, one more thing before I get started here, I want to say, if you're trying to make this frame somewhat level, and you're going to build it on a garage floor or whatever, make sure your garage floor is level first. We tried building on this garage floor before. We tried building some garden boxes, and it is not, so there was a lot of dips and stuff in it. But I'm pretty sure this driveway is. So we'll check it here with the level. Obviously, it's slanted down that way, but we'll check for level here. That's looking pretty good. I'm honestly not too worried about it, so we'll punch one into this corner here, see how it looks, and keep going if it looks good. Well, that's feeling pretty good. I think I'll go with that. Well, that's done here, so I want to show you, though, quick. This ended up being, this board is a little under this one, so it isn't exactly level. And so is the other side. So on the last 2 corners, I lifted them up with my hand so I could feel, and then did 1 screw and tweaked the other one. And then screwed it down. So I checked for square, and it's of course not, which I'm not surprised, because these boards are messed up too. But what I'm thinking about now is I'm not exactly sure if this can handle being moved around a lot, because it is not super rigid. It seems kind of flimsy. So I'll have to look into that and decide what my next step is. Well, I decided I'm going to put some braces across the corners here on the inside. I'll probably do that with 2x4 pallet boards, and we have a whole ton of those, so I'm not worried about running short on wood. And I'm going to tidy up before I do that, though, because otherwise I'm going to start tripping over stuff, or I'm going to start losing things, which isn't good. Well, I found these out at the shed. They're a little under 24 inches. And my plan is to cut them to 10 inches at 45 degrees on each end, and I have 2 of them. So what I'm getting ready to do now is chop this to a 45, and then chop it in half, and then cut the other end to the 45. It's a little tricky with this skill saw. It doesn't turn out perfect, but I'm not aiming for perfect here. I'm aiming for functionality, like I said before. So I'll get that set up and start chopping. not sure what happened there. I'm going to have to get somebody to help me hold it. It kept moving. I don't know if that's what the problem was. Figured out what the problem was. The screw came undone, which is kind of scary. I had that one happen one time before. So I guess I under-tightened it this time. Well, that ended up a little weird, but that's okay. I'll have to cut the rest, and that's going to be kind of weird measuring it because it's not exactly straight. But I'm also going to set up these sawhorses different and maybe put a piece of plywood across the top or something because that really wasn't working where it was spinning. So I'll measure and set up that next cut. Well, now that I'm done cutting these, I can attach them. I want to say about them quick, they're probably not going to attach on very flat because there's a few of them, you can see especially on this one, it kind of got lopsided, and that happens with the skill saw. You've seen I had some problems, it gets stuck and whatnot, and not exactly sure why, but if you had a miter saw, it would probably work out better. But I don't, so I have to use that. Okay, so you saw in that last clip, I was screwing in that last screw and I moved my thumb like that. Well, I looked down and here's what I saw. And on the other side, screws are too long. I thought they would work because I measured them out, but I guess I went too low. If I went on at an angle, I might be able to get them, but they might be sticking out through there. So I'm going to have to retry that. Well, that was the last one. It went pretty well except for a couple screws that went through. I kept having them go through after the first one. And I guess you really have to drill high if you're going to use 2.5 inch ones. 2-inch ones might have been a little easier, but I don't have those. And you don't really need them. You just have to make sure that you drill high. So now I'm going to see about the pipe. And in the original blog post, the guy used 3/4, but we don't have that right now. And we have some 1-inch over here. That was for a different project, but we won't get around to that for a while, so we'll just buy some more 1-inch if we need it. But before I start using that, I'm going to see if it bends, because I've never tried bending PVC pipe before. I've never used it really in any kind of build. So I'm going to do a test run and see how well it bends. Well, we just tried bending the pipe and it looks like it'll work. It's just got a lot of tension, so I don't know if this wood will hold it. But I guess we'll just have to give it a try and see. Well, it's been a little while and we ended up getting 3/4 schedule 40 anyway, because for one thing, we didn't have a bit big enough, and if we did do it big enough for a 1-inch, it was gonna eat a lot of this wood out, and looks like in my estimation it was going to make it structurally unstable. And there was other ways we could try to strap it to there, but it'd be hard to do that in this corner, and I want to try to have it as close to the edge as possible. So we'll use 3/4. But before I move on to any of the other building part, I'm going to prime and paint it, and I'm not going to do that for looks like I said before. I'm just doing it for sealing the wood. So I'm going to flip it upside down to get the underside first with the primer, and after I prime the whole thing, I'll paint it. Now usually when I mix up paint, before I shake the can, I always make sure that the lid is on, because I have heard of cases where the lid isn't on and someone shook it. It didn't turn out well. So I always make sure the lid's on good and tight before I give it a little shake, mix it up a bit. So usually barn paint is cheaper, and the barn paint we got was, but we've got our barn paint before at Lowe's, and at Lowe's generally what I've seen is it's self-priming, but it turns out the stuff that we got wasn't self-priming. So buying barn paint would be more expensive in this case if we didn't already have a primer, but we did. So that's handy, and that's what we're going to use. Just mix this up here. After I'm done mixing, I take my stick and the brush, and I brush the paint, extra paint off, falls into the can. Then I set the stick somewhere where it's not going to ruin something. Then for getting the brush ready, I dip it a little bit, not that much, and then wipe it on the edge of the can so that when you smear it on your piece, it doesn't drip everywhere. So I'll paint that and I'll get back to you when I'm done. I just finished priming and painting everything. It turned out pretty good. I probably should have cleaned it off better before I started painting it. Like, there's some stuff that got stuck in the paint, like all the dirt and stuff that was on there. But it's not a big deal. Anyway, it'll just protect it from rotting, or at least for a while. Well, that's all for now. Stay tuned for part 2 of this. In part 2, I'll put the hoops on, the fence, make the door, and stuff like that. So, if you're not subscribed, please do. You'll know when I upload part 2 of this. And until then, have a good one.